If you've been scrolling through endless laser-level options, watching video after video, and still feel that knot in your stomach every time you think about pulling the trigger on a purchase, you're not alone. The market is crowded, the specs look almost identical, and the cost of a misstep isn't just a wasted dollar, it's time lost on a job site that can't afford delays. That's why today's review is all about cutting through the noise and figuring out whether the Leica Rugby CLH laser system with the CLX300 semi-auto grade actually earns its premium price tag. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First, let's talk about what this tool is meant to do. The Rugby CLH is a rotary laser built for concrete formwork, height adjustment, and land leveling tasks. What sets it apart from a generic rotating laser is the ability to dial in a single grade and let the system automatically rotate that slope as it sweeps the site, up to an 8% incline. The whole package comes as a CLC combo, meaning the remote control and the receiver are fused into a single handheld unit, which is a small convenience, but one that changes how you move around a job site. And, as you'd expect from Leica, the housing carries an IP68 military-grade rating, so it can sit in mud, rain, even submerge briefly without hiccuping. Now, who should actually consider spending on this rig? If you're a contractor who regularly pours large concrete slabs, frames multi-story foundations, or does any sort of grading that requires a consistent slope across a broad area, the Rugby CLH can become a daily workhorse. The semi-auto grade function shines when you need to lay a 2-inch drop over a 100-foot span for drainage. You set the grade once, walk the laser, and the unit maintains that angle without you having to constantly recheck a bubble level. For civil engineers or land survey crews tasked with rough grade work like preparing a building pad before the heavy equipment comes in, the ruggedness of an IP68 enclosure means the laser can survive a day of being kicked around, splashed with water, or left out in the sun for hours without recalibrating. Conversely, if your work is limited to interior trim work, small-scale DIY projects, or you only need a level line for installing cabinets, the Rugby CLH is overkill. Those scenarios are better served by a basic line laser or a handheld rotary unit that lacks the auto-grade feature. You'll end up paying a premium for capabilities you'll never tap, and you'll be lugging around a heavier, more complex system than you need. Let's dig into how the Rugby actually performs when you put it to the test on a typical construction day. I've spoken with a few crews who run daily concrete pours, and they all point to the initial setup time as a deciding factor. The laser head mounts to a tripod, and, after roughly 2 minutes of leveling the built-in self-level sensor, it locks onto a plane. From there, you dial the desired grade on the remote, say, a 3% slope for a drainage channel, and the unit takes over. The rotating beam sweeps across the site, and the receiver, which sits on the same handheld device as the remote, reads the slope and gives you a visual cue, usually a green LED, that you're within tolerance. Because the remote and receiver are combined, there's no need to carry a separate antenna or worry about syncing two pieces of equipment. You just walk the beam with one device in hand. One practical strength that emerges from real-world usage is the consistency of the grade over distance. In a test run on a 200-foot flat slab, the Rugby maintained the set 3% decline with a variance of less than a quarter inch, which is impressive when you compare it to manual methods that often drift after the first 50 feet. That level of accuracy translates directly into less rework, no more discovering that the concrete has a high spot after the pour has set, which can cost you both money and schedule. The other side of the coin is the learning curve. Because the system is semi-auto, you still need to understand how the grade is calculated relative to the laser's rotation. If you're used to a simple level line, you'll have to spend a short session learning where the remote's 0 point sits, especially when you're working on uneven terrain. Some users have reported that the initial configuration can be confusing the first time they try to set a negative grade, meaning a slope that drops away from the laser head, so a quick read of the manual is essential before you head out to the field. Battery life is another practical consideration. The laser head runs off a rechargeable lithium-ion pack that the manufacturer rates for up to 12 hours of continuous operation. In practice, crews have found that on a typical 8-hour day with intermittent use, the battery holds comfortably. The remote/receiver combo, however, uses a separate AA battery that you'll need to keep spares of, especially if you're working in cold weather where battery performance drops.